And I was wondering, Desiree, if you could take roll.
Yes. Mr. Rieger?
Here.
Yes. Ms. Redmond? Here. I probably should have gave a couple instructions because we've got some new technology in the room. When you're responding with the microphones, you push a button, it's going to go green, and then it's live, and then you'll push it, it'll go red, and then it's not live. With the phones, like Steve mentioned, there's an echo. So if one of the microphones in the room is green while somebody on the phone is trying to speak, it'll echo. So we'll have to be mindful to have our mics off when they're speaking on the telephone. So with that said, we have Steve, we have Pat, Karen Norsworthy here, Kim Hayes.
Present.
And Mr. Perkins, Paul.
Present.
You have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Desiree. Well, before we move forward on approval of the agenda, I'm going to, since I am calling in remotely, I'm going to turn the gavel over to Pat Redmond. And Pat, if you wouldn't mind chairing today's meeting from this point forward, I'd appreciate it. I think it'll go more smoothly if one of the people who's there in person is serving as chair.
Thank you. I will do that. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I will approve
So,
the agenda. So,
And Paul
I'll second.
seconds the agenda.
Is there any opposition to approving the agenda as presented? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. We have the minutes of the previous meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of May 10th, 2022.
this is Karen. I move to approve.
And this is Paul. I second the motion.
Motion's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of May 10th, 2022. Is there any objection to approving the minutes as presented? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Is there any unfinished business to come before us? Is anyone aware of? Hearing none. New business is the reorganization of the Salary and Emoluments Commission, and the first item on it is to elect a chair, and I'll entertain nominations to elect a chair.
I'll nominate Kim.
Is there a second? Is there a second to that nomination to nominate Kim? That motion dies. Is there another nomination to elect a chair?
This is Karen. I will nominate Steve.
This is Paul. I'll second the, or I'll, is it a second? Okay, I'll second the nomination.
The motion's been made and seconded to nominate Steve as chairman of the commission. Do I want to take are there any objections to electing Steve as chairman of the commission? Hearing no objections, Steve, you're the chairman of the commission again. I entertain nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Pat.
I'll second that as Paul.
Pat's been nominated, and the It's been made to nominate Pat as the vice chair, and it's been seconded. Are there any objections to electing Pat as the vice chair of the commission? And that would be Pat Redmond, and by the way, the other was Steve Rager. Hearing no objections, Pat Redmond has been elected as the vice chair of the commission. The item we have before us, item B, 6B, is a request regarding a stipend for Assembly Youth Representative. And you should have received this information also via email. There is a request from Assembly Member Christopher Constant regarding this. Would anybody like to comment on this?
Pat, this is Steve. Go ahead. Sorry, that was the echo, and I was telling someone else. Go ahead. The thoughts that I had, I mean, they're more like questions than conclusions. One is whether the charter contemplated the Salaries and Emoluments Commission weighing in on anything other than what I understand it was created to weigh in on, which is the mayor, the assembly members, and the school board members. And I guess that way back in the past, the water and wastewater board members. But I just, a kind of a threshold question is whether it's just the propriety of branching out into the compensation for any other position. The second question, if we were to cross that threshold, is how this would appear. I'm kind of thinking that for a lot of the youth representatives, it's just an extraordinary volunteer opportunity. But would it properly be characterized as a volunteer opportunity if there became compensation associated with it? And how has that whole thought been thought through? Those are just some questions I have. I think the price the compensation that was in the materials, is very modest. It's not a matter of that. It's kind of more the two questions that I cited that came to my mind.
Does anyone else have comments?
This is
Yes,
Karen.
hey, this is Kim, Pat. Hope you guys can hear me. My comments would be one, I don't think it's completely unusual for a volunteer board to offer stipends. I don't serve on a board that offers a stipend, but I have seen boards. My comment would be if the assembly meetings were a couple of hours every other Tuesday, I probably wouldn't be supportive of this. Knowing that our assembly meetings last 6 hours typically, I think that is pretty taxing for a youth representative. And the money that is listed in this potential ordinance is pretty minimus and might just represent literally just gas money at this point, right? So those were just my two comments.
Go ahead, Karen.
This is Karen. I too, like Steve, believe that this was initially set up just for elected officials. So I question whether we have any standing with this. I would think there'd have to be a charter change to allow us to do this. But secondary to that, I think there's a few issues with, I believe the assembly members all have staff that are paid a stipend or something similar to that, I think through accounts payable or that they receive, I think, on a monthly basis. The other issue that potentially we may have, because once you start paying them, you're going to have to look at wage and hour and hiring. if you're going to bring them on as employees and start compensating them, depending on their age, you're talking about we're going to have to get work permits for them. And then with the hours of the assembly and that, you may run into some issues and concerns there that you may not be successful with, depending on the age of the youth representative. So those are my concerns.
And I have a few thoughts on this too. It doesn't seem, this seems like this is something that if the assembly chooses to compensate them, that would be the assembly's job, not our job, because it is not an elected official. We only work with the elected officials. And while it sounds like a great idea to offer a stipend, and I know that youth would appreciate having something, it is not, I don't think it's the position of the Salary and Emoluments Commission to do that.
This is Paul. I agree with that. I think we're barking up the wrong tree here. I think the assembly would need to create a position and do it via their methods for us to then evaluate it.
And just to beat a dead horse, if the assembly chooses to go in a different direction on this, if we're going to bring them on with this stipend or even as employee, I would just really caution that the research is done with wage and hour, because they will need work permits, and so that they don't go down a road and that they're regretting it later if they don't have all the information up front. So, thank you.
Any other comments regarding this item? Is there a motion to approve this item? Item B, stipend for assembly youth representative. So, okay, the item dies to lack of motion. And then we need to review do we need to review this? We need to review the salaries of the mayor, assembly members, and school board members. Comments? I don't know. I haven't looked at the most recent. The current mayor, we just recently moved an increase. Oh, come on.
This is Desiree. If you all flip to your page, 6C, it should be the last page in the packet that I sent out to everyone. It has a brief summary of the last actions of the Salaries and Emoluments Commission. So you'll see, hopefully this is easy to understand, that in 2020, you all approved a resolution to increase the mayor's compensation. In 2019 and 2018, you increased the assembly members' compensation, and in 2018, you increased the school board's compensation. And then off to the top right corner, I put the election year because I think that's useful when we think about this.
Thank you for that. I'm going to just do my personal comment is I don't think it's a good time to do any increases. They're all doing pretty good at this point. And reminding everybody that part of the elected officials' job is semi-volunteer. I mean, they don't take the job for the income. They take the job to do good for the community. And at this point, I think the salaries are adequate. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Paul. I agree with that too. And, I also think if we're going to give people money, then we need a result. And I'm actually a little discouraged by our school performance in terms of ratings in the state. We're always consistently in the top bottom. of the comparison of states, and Anchorage is no different than the rest of the state in terms of performance. So I question rewarding bad behavior by increasing funds. I find this more as a volunteer issue, and I would like to at least lock in, keep it where it is right now based on performance. I realize we're just a commission, but we should hold our elected officials accountable. And one of the ways we can do it is by finance for performance. So something to think about.
Karen, do you have any comment?
Just looking at what we've done, we, in 19, we did a significant increase for the assembly, and 2020, we brought up the mayor's salary. The only thing I think that's worth looking at, since I think we've done those other two recently, is maybe the school board. They haven't seen an increase since 2018. So we're looking at 5 years. I think that's probably, in my opinion, the only one that's worth looking at this point, if we wanted to look at anything.
You're still on.
Yeah, this is Paul. I'm just, again, the school board of all the boards is the one I'm least interested in raising their rates based on their performance. I don't think they deserve it. They've shut down consistently during COVID, shut down all the students from going to school. My kid was blessed enough we decided to homeschool him, and he did great, exceeding the performance of Anchorage by 95%. But that's our choice, and the school districts are not taking care of the students. So I'm not at all interested in raising their rates for their performance at this point. So that's my 2 cents. So if we do want to raise it, I'm going to be a no vote. Thank you.
Steve, you had a
This,
comment?
this is
This is Kim.
Yeah.
Oh, us on the phone having a hard time figuring out when to jump in. I don't have any motions to make or anything. Desiree, I was hoping to gather ask for some information for maybe future meetings. I was wondering if it was possible to gather information on the cost. Right now with the assembly, at least, we do give them a medical allowance, towards the cost of healthcare. And I was looking at the hours worked, so I have a secondary question, but what the cost would be to allow them to participate in the municipal system as it is for the municipal employees. My secondary question would be, would that be based on just assembly meeting hours worked, or how would we calculate that? So I guess it's a two-part question. One, investigating what the cost would be to just include the assembly members in the existing municipal, healthcare system, and if technically our assembly members would qualify based on hours worked. So mostly just an information request, not an action request.
this. Yeah, this is Steve too. My thoughts ran similarly. I think that if you look at the compensation for the mayor, the assembly, and the school board, and there's a pretty big disparity, between all those, and I think that it would help us to put them in context, to know the responsibility and the hours worked, to have some kind of background. And it would be hard to get quantitative information on anything regarding responsibility. I think, to me, it might be doable, but it's hard. But hours worked, there probably is some information we could benefit from at a future meeting to help us better judge whether the compensations are comparable to the time required. And just one other comment I would just make to chime in on the conversation. All of the compensation levels that we take up and recommend only apply prospectively to newly elected officials. So, I think that maybe is by design, but it does uncouple any person's feelings about past performance and compensation, because what we're doing is taking up compensation for future people who come on to either the mayor or the assembly or the school board.
Yeah, this is Paul. I mean, I see your point, except for the fact that we don't want professional politicians. We want volunteer, civic-minded people, unless I'm incorrect on that, in your school boards. So I want their motivations to not be the money, but to be the love of civic and the improvement of your society as a whole. So that's just my thought on that.
This is Kim to comment on that. Yes, we don't want professional politicians on our school board. I think $11.80 an hour is less than my 16-year-old makes at McDonald's. So that's not, nobody's doing it for the money. And I don't think we've ever, I think in past meetings, we've always been really cautious to make sure that what we're doing is balancing, people doing it for the love of the volunteer service, but also understanding that you want to recruit from a wide variety of people in the city of Anchorage who could take this on, and it wouldn't be to the detriment of their life. And I think, that would be my comment. Is that it's been a while since we looked at school board. I would love more information before we decided to take up any action on the school board. Similar to what Steve said, a little bit more information about how long their meetings are, but also the other requirements of being a school board member, the other types of events they're required to do. Any sort of research. I know they don't have staff like Assembly have access to, so more information would be helpful on that as well.
Great.
This is Desiree. To briefly touch on Steve's comment, if you look at page 6B, or the one right before the last page, it has a little schedule of the meetings for 2020 that the assembly had. And I don't, if you guys remember, I put one of these together, I think in 2018 or 2019. And I think the total for that time period was 230 or 250 hours. And now we're at 490 hours for the year of 2022. And from personal experience working with the assembly, it seems like we are doing more and more meetings and they are lasting longer and longer. So that's a little bit of information as far as scheduled meetings go. That of course doesn't include assembly members meeting with constituents or doing any prep work or anything like that. This is just scheduled meetings. Kim, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're interested in information on how much it would cost for assembly members to have full access to health benefits?
If they so, this is Kim Hayes. Yes, that would be my interest. Secondarily, to your point about the information we have in front of us is just length of meetings and does not include community council. I feel like in the past we had kind of done a survey of the members to kind of ask what they were, what meetings they were doing. I don't remember if that was in this commission or something else I was participating in, but yes, hoping to see what the fiscal note would be on that, and if our assembly members would technically qualify based on the current rules for union employees on, at what hours you can access the healthcare. So just kind of a double question there.
Kim, I'm going back through the notebook, and I know you don't have that available to you right now, but in 2019, Barbara and Desiree did a lot of work for us on this already, where they did list the different meetings of the different groups that the assembly folks go to. So that was listed, like I said, it was 2019. Trying to find the beginning of it. The October 24th meeting, I believe it was. They provided a lot of really good feedback on pretty much everything that you've asked for, including the volume of emails that they've received and such. So they have done that work already for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, 2019, the October 24th meeting. And just from personal experience,
I guess that would mean, Desiree, my follow-up question would just wondering if they would qualify based on how HR determines that for assembly members. Thanks.
And this is Karen again, because we did bring this up before on looking at them potentially moving over to the municipality's employee health plan. And there were some concerns. Obviously, the code would have to change and right now I can't remember what, there is a major stumbling block and I can't recall what it is right now. But we have looked at this before in the past, and I think we looked at it around 2019 as well, but I was kind of cruising through the notes here to see if that information was in here. And I didn't see it in my first glance through.
This is Steve again. Desiree, I guess I didn't scroll down far enough to see the school hours that you had in there. Could you walk me through just what that means? Or was this like sum of occurrence?
Steve, you're really hard to understand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just, you had. I was looking at the page that you provided on school board, and for example, on January, what do those two numbers represent that go across to the right?
Which page are you looking at?
You have a schedule. You have at the very end. There's a schedule of statistics about assembly meetings, and then below it, I believe that's a schedule of statistics on the next page about school board meetings. And am I reading that correctly? This is really hard because I have to take my phone away. Take my phone away from the ear to look at this.
Sorry, that took me a minute to understand. So yes, the third group is for the school board, and I've got it separated by the president's salary, the school board president, and then school board members, since they do have different salary amounts.
Oh, okay. So just a second, but where it says, I'm having a hard time now getting back to that page. I have to scroll on the phone. When it says occurrence, what does that mean? Right. It says sum of occurrence.
Oh, you're looking at 6B for the meetings. So that's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. That is the number of meetings themselves. So if you look at the first 6B, which has the meeting types, for example, under the committee meetings, audit committee, there were 6 audit committee meetings in 2020, and they were scheduled for a total of 6 hours. So 6 1-hour meetings. Does that help?
Okay, I follow. That one makes sense. It goes down the next page to the school board. Oh no, sorry. It's scheduled assembly meetings again. I thought that was for school. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't include the school board meetings because I did not have access to that information. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay, now I get it. Sorry. I jumped to the conclusion that the second page was school board meetings and the first was assembly. My mistake. Sorry.
This is Pat, and I think the school board only meets twice a month, or maybe once a month sometimes. So their meetings are, and then unless they call a special meeting, so they don't meet as often, even regularly, as the assembly.
Okay.
This is Desiree.
I'm only. Go ahead.
Sorry, Steve. I was going to say I'm happy to reach out to the new school board executive assistant and ask.
This is Karen. In going back to that October of 2019, because I'm like, we've kind of done this all before on pages 4 and 5. it's the school board, their year-round schedule. That Barbara and Desiree already did this information for us back then. And it lists that the school board meets twice a month unless noted otherwise. And they went through and listed everything for us. And they gave us a rundown on the school board and the times that they meet.
Does that 2019 data give an hours per year compared to assembly hours per year?
This is Pat. They have less hours per year than the assembly. And they still have less hours per year, even though they usually have somebody at a community council meeting, but that depends on the meetings and the time, whether or not somebody comes to the meeting or responds. But they have less hours at any time during the year, at the current time.
Looking at this
Yeah,
document that was provided to us in October, it was the school board meets twice a month unless noted otherwise. They have work sessions are held once per month, and they're between 4 and 5. Regular meetings 5 and 6, and for executive sessions, and then 6 p.m. is their regular meeting times. And then it was broken down on each of the meetings that they had for the year. The October 24th meeting of 2019, Barbara and Desiree did a tremendous amount of work for us and prepared this packet. And this kind of became our Bible on how we made decisions for increasing the assembly's salary. And we talked about the school board at that time as well. But this was quite a nice packet of information.
I recall all that, and I'm not disagreeing with any of it. I just was curious, just how the the ratio of compensation compares to the ratio of hours, and we might not be able to get to that at this meeting, but that would be the only thing that would jump out if there was quite a disparity, between those two ratios. But we probably don't have that worked up, for this meeting now. And I don't know if I'm hearing enough enthusiasm for taking up any of the salaries this year. But if there were, that would be a piece of information I would really want to have.
Steve, to your point, I wouldn't want to take up a motion this meeting, but if we had more information, it would help me understand if we should this year, specifically related to school board, I think.
So I think maybe we can look at that prospectively. We meet once a year to assess whether we want to take up salaries. This first meeting is typically a scoping meeting, and then if it turns out that we do want to take up salaries, we do a public announcement and make it a hearing where there's noticed. So I think that we either get the information and meet again later this year, or we just leave it that when we have initial meeting where we decide whether we want to take up notices, that would be take up salaries, that we have some reasonably up-to-date statistical information on hours, between the between the school board and the assembly.
This is Pat, so that you're saying that,
Steve, this is Kim. Oh, go ahead, Pat.
oh, I was just going to say that perhaps we want to just look at the school board, because it has been a while and theirs are considerably less than the assembly, and the assembly even, and they do put in less hours, but we could look at that this year, reminding ourselves that any change that is made wouldn't be effective until after the next election, if we made any change this year within this cycle. Is that something you're interested in doing?
Right.
Go ahead, Steve.
I'm open to it. I'm not saying that I'm advocating for it, but I'm thinking that there is a big disparity between compensation for school board and compensation for assembly, and at some point we need to look at it and see if that is consistent with the amount of time commitment that that we're asking of the people who serve on those. I'm not insistent that we look at it this year. I'm open to it, but not insistent. I think at some point that disparity probably has to be addressed head on, and just decide to leave it as it is or not.
Is there a motion
This is Kim Hayes. I would support. Oh, sorry, there's a massive delay when I talk. I would support meeting again sometime this year, to Steve's comment.
Is there a motion to look at the school board members' compensation in more in depth during this year at another meeting?
I'd be curious what the other. I think I know now where a lot of the members are. Anyone who hasn't spoken their preference, I'd like to know before we decide whether to take up a motion on it.
This is Desiree. I just want to point out, you don't need a motion to take up further discussion, because it's just discussion. If you'd like to direct me as your staffer to get additional information for you to do some research and gather that, so the Salaries and Emoluments Commission can have a second meeting to look through, and we can do this again next month, then that's perfectly fine. But we don't need a motion for that.
Given that information,
Okay.
do we want to, I think that we should go ahead and look in more in depth at the school board compensation, whether it's next month or sometime within this year. Steve, you had a comment?
No, I think that's what you said is just fine.
Okay,
So, I guess the question, it's more of a question than a comment. This would almost be a continuation of this meeting in a way. I mean, it'd be another meeting, but it's not sending out a notice of a proposed change at this point. Is that a fair assessment, Desiree?
You were asking Desiree, but yeah, that is correct. This would just be another meeting like today, not a public hearing or public input, unless we need, that would come after we've gone through it, and then if we need additional input.
So this is Karen to help Desiree out. What specifically do we want her to look at? Do we want her to update the information from the October 24th, 2019 with current information? And would that just be having her update the school board information that was provided to us then? Or do you want her to go through all of the assembly stuff again? Because that is a tremendous amount of work, and I'm not sure that is going to help us in our decision at all. So I would, for the sake of time and work for Desiree, I would recommend that potentially we just update what was provided to us in 2019.
And this is Desiree to make a comment. I'm sorry, Pat. This year, 2023, the assembly is up for election. Half of the members are up for election. Next year is the mayor. So if we look at that little box in the top right corner, it's the mayor, and the assembly is not up for election again until 2025. So in my mind, of course, this is up to you guys. It does not make sense to make changes to any of the assembly's compensation at this time.
That was going to be my comment too, that strictly, this would be strictly looking at the school board's issues.
Yeah, this is Paul. I agree. Well, this is, if we look at just the school, the things I'd like to know is, obviously there's the group meetings and then there's the individual meetings. But it would be curious, Desiree, just to figure out how many people attend one versus the other two. You may have somebody who does just a ton of meetings, and then you have another person who is just goes to one or two. So it's not only meetings, but how many people attend said meetings, for time involved. And I think that's a valid conversation. Obviously, we want to compensate them for their time. Thanks.
Steve, you had a comment?
I think it was almost a belt and suspenders concept that if the sense is that the hours required for assembly service haven't changed that dramatically between when the last survey was done and now, I see no reason to ask for all that work to be done again just to refine the number. If someone has a sense that it's a whole order of a huge difference, maybe that's information that would be useful. But if it's not, I agree. All we really want is similar data so that we can compare that pertains to the school board service. Yeah, because we already have the data on the assembly, assuming that it's at all still valid.
Any more comments on this, on the school board issue? Okay, I think at that point, then Desiree, you've heard Karen had some good suggestions, and I think that's what we want, is just school board information for the next meeting, and then it doesn't need to be within the month. It could be when you get available, before preferably before August. No.
Not, I will try my best to work with the school board to get this information to you guys. And then, of course, in similar fashion, probably send out a doodle poll to see when everybody's available next. But maybe not in the summer, maybe a little after. Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay.
That works for me.
At this point, then we're down to member comments. Mr. Perkins, do you have any comments?
Nope. I thought we covered all the data we're talking about, and it'll be interesting to see the statistics on the education.
Ms. Norsworthy?
No comments. Thank you.
Kim, do you have any additional comments?
I do not. Thank you, Pat.
And Steve, any more comments?
None additional from me either.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to do audience participation? Seeing no one. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
And I'll second the motion.
The motion's been made and second to adjourn. Any objection? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Steve.